Hi team, I hope you're all well. Today I am going to tell you about my recent reads for the first half of May. So this will be from the 1st until the 16th of May, which is obviously the first half of May. Within the first half of May, I have been taking part in Asian Readathon. I've been taking part in my first week of Believeathon, taking part in Books for the Brave. What else have I been taking part in? Mental Health-a-thon. There is a lot that I've been taking part in, so there are quite a few books here. I've read 16 books in the first half of May, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's get into it because there's quite a few books here. So the first book is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. I loved this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. This is following Dimple and Rishi. Dimple is very much of the opinion that she should be able to go to university and have her own job and all the rest of it before she even has to think about being in a relationship, never mind getting married. Her parents are trying to set up an arranged marriage. She doesn't want that, obviously. She's quite an independent person. She wants to be her own person. She wants to be able to work. She doesn't want to be a wife and like a stay-at-home mum and things like that. She wants to be her own person. However, her parents have set her up with Rishi. She does not know this, but when she gets to an event that she's basically, and she didn't actually really have to beg her parents that much, could she go? They just kind of were like, yeah, you can go. It costs $1,000, but sure, you can go. She was suspicious of why they were allowing her to go. It turns out it was because it was going to cause a chance meeting between Rishi and Dimple. Well, it's not a chance meeting, her parents have set it up, but Dimple knows nothing about it, and Rishi thinks Dimple knows that they are having a meeting to see if they get on for an arranged marriage, essentially. So this is a situation where lies are being told to both of these, I don't want to say kids, they're like 17, but to both of them from the parents, but also Rishi probably knows more of the situation than Dimple does. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was great. Dimple really stuck to her guns throughout the whole entirety of this book, but Rishi really did sort of grind her down towards the end. I just thought it was really, really cute, and I'm so excited to continue with the series. It was great. So 4 out of 5 stars for that one. Then I read The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. This, I am not sure how to explain this story. It was really, really weird. This is a contemporary with some magical realism in it. So we are following Mikey, who wants to go to, he wants to graduate, wants to go to prom before someone goes and blows the high school up again. But his best friend is the god of the mountain lions. The school's been blown up twice already, and there have been issues with vampires and werewolves and all sorts. Now, I went into this thinking it was complete contemporary, despite the whole comment about the fact that his best friend is the god of mountain lions at the bottom of the synopsis. But I don't know whether it was me or just in general that I completely am fine with urban fantasy, totally fine with it, especially if I know when I'm going into it that it's urban fantasy. But sometimes magical realism throws me off guard because I'm just not expecting it. You know, everything's just so contemporary in real life, and all of a sudden they'll mention about the fact that the school was blown up 2 years ago and they've been having issues with vampires, but it's just so casual, like nobody's worried about it. The kids are still going out doing their own thing after dark, and you know, it's just really, really casual. And I think I struggled to get my head around it. There are a lot of other issues going on in here as well. I read this for Mental Health-a-thon. There is alcoholism, I think suicidal thoughts, there's depression, anxiety, OCD. So there is a lot going on in here. It is jam-packed full of mental health rep. So it was really great on that front. I learned a lot about OCD and also a lot about alcoholism. So it was really good on that front. But I just struggled with this a little bit. I still gave it 4 stars because the mental health rep, I think I gave it 3.5 actually. The mental health rep was so good in it, but I did struggle with the general gist of the story. So I mean, it was fine, but yeah, that's just what happened. And I read Dark King by C.N. Crawford. This is the first in the Court of Sife. series. I gave this 3 stars. We were reading this for the Spread Your Pages book club, which is a smutty book club essentially. I really enjoy the books that we've been reading so far, and this one was a little bit different because it was more fantasy than contemporary, which was great. So this is a snarky fae, a sexy king, and a forbidden desire, deep as the sea. So this is an urban fantasy. This is what I mean, like, I do enjoy urban fantasies, but this was a smutty urban fantasy. Listen to it on BookBeat. It was really easy to get through, really easy listen, lots of angst, lots of, you know, will they, won't they. It was really good. I'm just gonna read the synopsis to you because in all honesty I can't fully remember what happened, which is probably why I've given it 3 stars. It is kind of forgettable. So once I was a fae princess with sea magic at my fingertips. Now I'm a hunted supernatural in a squalid shop. Stripped of my power, my only comforts are stale cookies, Elvis records and my hula hoop, until a lethally sexy fae king arrives and he rips even those away. After the brutal king throws me in a prison, I strike a bargain with him, my freedom in exchange for helping him find a magical blade. What Lyre doesn't know is that the blade might restore my stolen magic. As we journey, the gorgeous jerk is starting to make me feel things I've never felt. When Lyre touches me, desire ignites. I see raging passion in his eyes too. If I give in, I risk losing my chance at reclaiming my power. Even worse, I could be forfeiting my life. It wasn't memorable, to be fair, so I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, so I just gave it an average 3 stars. It was fine. I got through it. It was okay. Then I read Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi. I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I thought it was fantastic. I absolutely adored this. I gave it 4 stars and I'm so excited to continue with this series. I've even bought the next 2. So I bought Unite Me, which is a combination of book 1.5 and book 2.5, 2 novellas, and then Unravel Me, which is book 2. So I can read book 1.5, book 2, book 2.5 before I need to buy the next one again. But I loved this. So this is a dystopian and it's following a teenage girl who has been locked up by the re-establishment, who is a harsh dictatorship in charge of a crumbling world. Juliet, however, is no ordinary teenager. No one can touch her, no one can kill her. When they touch her, they end up dying. She like seems to she doesn't do it forcefully, like she actually doesn't want people to touch her because she doesn't want to kill people, but she can project pain, if you like, and it doesn't kill all of them so long as she doesn't touch them too long, but sometimes she cannot take her hand away and she struggles massively with it. The re-establishment want to use her as a weapon, but Juliet has other plans. After a lifetime without freedom, she's finally discovered the strength to fight back and to find a future with the one person she thought she'd lost forever. So this does have a romance in it, which is actually adorable. I loved the romance, and it's kind of like a second chance romance. It's great. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was outstanding. I just didn't think I could do it justice enough to explain what was going on, because there's a lot going on in this book. Considering it's not that long, there's a lot going on, but I loved it. It was fantastic. Highly recommend. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I reread Aurora Rising by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I read this last year. I gave it 4 stars. We start off by following Ty, who is about to graduate from the Squad Academy, and he is going to be able to choose his own squad, but he goes out on one last flight just before the graduation ceremony is going to begin, and he ends up coming across a distress signal. So when he boards the ship, he realizes that everybody on board is dead in cryopods apart from one person, who is Aurora O'Malley. I think that's her name, her full name. Aurora, yeah, Aurora Gillian O'Malley. And he brings her back to the ship, but when he gets back to the main ship, he finds that the graduation ceremony has been and gone, and he hasn't had a chance to pick his squad. So he ends up with what he deems the bottom of the barrel, essentially. But it turns out it's his sister and his best friend, and then a couple of other people, which he doesn't know. So he thinks they're the bottom of the barrel, but things ensue. Aurora is not as she seems and things go down. It's really, really good. This is obviously a sci-fi set in space and I adore this so much. Gave it 4 out of 5 stars, thought it was fantastic. I've reread, this is obviously a reread, so last year when I got this I physically read it, but this year we have the audiobook for this in the UK, which is great because for some reason on some books we are a year behind on getting audiobooks, which is frustrating. It's a full cast, which was fantastic. Really enjoyed the audiobook and I'm so excited to pick up Aurora Burning, which is the second in the series and has just come out. I should have already picked it up by now, but I haven't because I'm a terrible booktuber. Then I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I gave this one 5 stars. This is a YA mystery thriller, which I absolutely loved. We're following Pippa, who basically is in her final year of college, I think, and she has to do like a final project where she gets to pick anything she wants. She has to do a report on it and investigate it, and she decides to pick the missing case of Andy Bell, who is a girl who went missing 5 years ago from her hometown and was allegedly murdered by her best friend Sal. Now, Pippa thinks that Sal's not guilty. The only problem is that Sal is now dead. So she has to investigate this and try and prove her theory is correct, and this just goes through the whole thing. I thought this was going to be a slog to get through because it's a chunky book, but honestly it's not. So entertaining, ever so slightly eerie in places. There were parts where I had to put this down. For example, if you know you know, but the camping part, I had to put this down. I was reading it in the evening, I had to come back to it in the morning. I just got too scared. I am a scaredy cat though, and I just loved the way that this turned out. Didn't see the ending coming, which is typical for me because I don't read a lot of thrillers and I never see the ending coming on thrillers, which actually is quite entertaining for me because it means that I never know who's done it. I love a good who's done it, but I never know who's done it, so it's really great. So I love this, gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Cannot wait to continue with the next one, which is Good Girl Bad Blood, and I do have it, so I can't wait to pick that up as soon as possible. But I love this, 5 out of 5 stars. Sorry if I've changed positions and my eye looks a bit weepy. I had a eyelash in it, I had to get it out. So then I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. This comes out tomorrow on the 18th. Today's the 17th, so when I'm recording this. So I was gifted an e-arc of this by NetGalley and Penguin, so thank you to them for gifting me this. I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, but it's not as summery beach ready type book as you think it's gonna be. This is following January and Augustus, so we only get, I think we only get the point of view from January, so it's only one perspective. He doesn't believe in happy endings. She's lost a faith that they exist, but could they find one together? So both of these people are writers, January and Augustus, and they went to uni together. Now, January spent her whole time at uni thinking that she was competing with Augustus because he was constantly saying things to her like, oh, you write romance and blah blah blah, and you know, giving her a bit of shit because she writes romance books. And she has since written several novels, but she's struggling at the moment. A year ago her dad passed away. I think it was a year ago. Some time ago her dad passed away, and she found out a secret about her dad that basically destroyed her entire world. It was awful. She went to go and stay at her dad's beach house and in the town where he grew up, in the hope that she would be able to actually write a book. She's had writer's block for a long time now, and she's struggling to write. Obviously, if your world has been destroyed as far as romance is concerned, you're going to struggle to write romance. As it turns out, the guy living next door is Gus, and he's also struggling with writer's block, and they end up coming up with a plan to write a novel, each of them to write a novel of the other's genre, if that makes sense. So Gus has to write a romance novel and she has to write, I think he writes kind of like, I can't really explain what his genre is. It's almost like a thriller, it's almost like historical fiction thriller, if you like, a little bit. So yeah, it's really good, but this does get, you know, quite deep in places and a little bit dark, and it was not what I was expecting. I was expecting, you know, this proper summer beachy romance type book, and it's just not like that at all. It is in places, but not for the most part. It does have some quite dark topics in it, and it's really good. It addresses quite a few things as well. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend. I love January and Gus. I just thought it was fantastic, and I can't wait to get my hands on a physical copy. I prefer the American cover though than the UK. So this is the UK cover and this one is the American cover, so I prefer the American. I'm going to try and get my hands on an American cover because I just love it. So I love that. It was 5 stars from me. Absolutely loved it. Then I read The Way Back by Jamie Fura. I read Jamie's last book, his debut novel, which was Our Life in a Day, I think it was called. I got an ARC of that last year from the publishers, which was lovely. So they sent me an e-ARC of this one this time, which is great. I really enjoyed this one. This is following 3 grown-up children, like adult children, the Cadogan children, Jessica, Kirsty and Patrick, and they haven't spoken to each other for 3 years. They had a massive argument 3 years ago and they've not spoken to each other since. They've obviously all got families and kids and things like that, but they've got own things going on in their lives that they haven't spoken to each other about in 3 years. Then the dad passes away. We start off with the dad passing away. It literally happens in the first chapter, and he has a plan for them to go out in his camper van on a road trip to go and spread his ashes in Scotland. So they have to spend some time together, and I think it's their dad's way from the grave of saying, right, you need to sort your shit out now because this is getting ridiculous. And it was just so lovely. It was so good. Obviously lots of bickering, quite a bit of negativity, but the way that they sort of came together in the end was just so nice. I just loved it. It was great. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Obviously only just come out, and I just thought it was fantastic. Then I read James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. This book, if you see, you'll see my Believe-a-thon video before week 1 before you see this, and in that I say that I gave it 2 stars partway through. That's come down to 1 star. I cannot tell you how much I dislike this book. I have been having an issue with Roald Dahl for a while now. I have read several of his books, so I mention it again in my Believe-a-thon TBR, but I've read Fantastic Mr. Fox, this one, James and the Giant Peach. I have read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, George's Marvellous Medicine, and I've read another one, SEO Trot. And I don't think I've given any of them, other than Fantastic Mr. Fox, more than 3 stars. I brought SEO Trots down to 2 after reading this one because I realised that I was probably being way too generous with that. I think I gave Charlie and the Chocolate Factory 3 and probably a similar rating with George's Marvellous Medicine. But honestly, the issues with this book, there are several times, I've even tabbed them up because I was so mortified by them. This is a children's book, and there are several times in this book where you know, I understand that sometimes writers put innuendos in children's movies or books, you know, where the adult will understand but the kid just wouldn't. But the innuendos in here are so blatantly obvious, it's not even funny. There's something about a green grasshopper's horny lap, which I just couldn't deal with, and then a girl asking James could she take a bite out of his marvellous peach, and I don't know if I'm being a prude, but honestly I couldn't deal with it. I was sat there thinking to myself, this is what happens now when I read a middle grade. I sit and I think to myself, would I read this to my nephew in the future? And I just sat there and I thought, would I balls read this to my nephew in the future? Like, no, I wouldn't. I would not pick this up and read this to him because I couldn't, not with a straight face. I just couldn't do it. So I was honestly mortified. For about 20 minutes I felt like I was 5 again, and then the grasshopper's horny lap just blew it out of the water for me, and I was like, oh no, this is terrible. Why? I just couldn't. 1 star. It was awful. I just couldn't do it. It was horrible. Then I read As Kismet Would Have It by Sandia Menon. This is a very short novella of about 40 pages that comes after When Dimple Met Rishi. Now, in theory, it's meant to come after When Dimple Met Rishi, but a lot of people in the comments on Goodreads have said read it after There's Something About Sweetie, because Sweetie's in the book. So I was a bit frustrated that I've picked this up thinking it comes in between When Dimple Met Rishi and There's Something About Sweetie, but in theory I think you should read it after There's Something About Sweetie. But anyway, I read it. It was a little bit pointless. Again, it's sort of coming back to Dimple and Rishi getting married. Rishi keeps pushing it, not for now, but like in the future. She's like blatantly against it, and he just keeps pushing it, and it's got to a point where he's like, I really think we should decide whether or not we should be together. And it just kind of went from there. It's literally 40 pages, so you can see how quickly that sort of rapidly that kind of moves. I gave it 3 stars. I felt like it was probably a little bit pointless, and a lot of people are angry about how it turned out, which I can semi-understand, but also I just love Dimple and Rishi, so it was nice to be back with them for a little bit. I enjoyed it, it was fine. I picked up Skewbuggery Pleasant, the first one by Derek Landy. This is the Dead Famous bestseller, and I loved this. We are following Stephanie, who is a young girl. She's 12 years old, she's in her first year at high school, and her uncle Gordon passes away, leaving her his entire estate. Now, her uncle Gordon used to write, he's a novelist, he's a writer, and he used to write like thriller horror type novels, and go on about things that, you know, supernatural things that she didn't think was real, until she meets Skewbuggery Pleasant, who is a detective inspector type person, a little bit like Sherlock Holmes. He's just a skull of like a bone man, essentially. It's just bones, and ends up taking her on some adventures to try and find out what happened to her uncle Gordon. And it's great. I am obsessed with this because, one, the main character is called Stephanie. It's very rare I meet a character called Stephanie in a book. I don't think I've ever met a character called Stephanie in a book before, so I loved it for that point of view. But also the audiobook for this was fantastic. I just had the best time with it, and I can't wait to continue with this series. Highly recommend this if you're looking for a middle grade series. There's about 13 books in this series now, so thank you to Harper 360 for sending me this. They wanted to send me the latest one, which was book 13, when it came out, before it came out in April. But because I hadn't read the series, I hadn't read any of the series, they sent me the first one, which was so nice of them, and I'm so glad that they did, because I can't wait to continue the series. It was awesome. Highly recommend picking this one up. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was amazing. Then I read Winnie the Pooh, the collection of Winnie the Pooh, which has got both Winnie the Pooh and House of Pooh Corner. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I don't think I need to explain to you what Winnie the Pooh is about. It was amazing. I love it. I'll always love it. Winnie the Pooh is my favourite. I adore him. That's it. Then I reread This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This is a book of Adam Kay's junior doctor diaries, basically. So when you are a junior doctor, you have to write diaries anyway on your patients and things like that. But when Adam was a junior doctor for about 7 years, I think, he wrote his own secret diaries. This is a collection of some of the things that he wrote down in his secret diaries, and I love this. I think he dealt with this very, very well. It starts off that some of the entries are hilarious, you know, he'll explain about something really funny that happened, whether that be with a co-worker or with a patient or something. Obviously he never goes into detail with the patients and things like that. And then other times it will be very, very serious entry where somebody might die, or something happens to a child or something like that. And you can, if you listen to the audiobook, I think it gives you a lot more because he narrates it himself. So you know when it's going to be a funny entry, but you also know when it's going to be really, really serious. And by the end of the book, you can feel the emotion in him. He's so angry at the NHS and everything, the shit he's had to deal with and things like that. He's just so angry. This sort of also, it's not just his secret diaries of being a junior doctor, but his entire life is affected during this time period. I think by the end of it, like, just things with his relationship with his girlfriend, his relationship with his family, his relationship with his friends, he's just really struggling by the end, and you can hear it in his voice. I loved it. I thought Adam did a great job with this, and I just thought it was great. I'm obsessed with this book. This is my second time reading it. I doubt it will be the last. I just think it's really, really good. Highly recommend listening to this if you are into your doctor type stories. This is obviously non-fiction, but I highly recommend picking this up if you are into that. Then I read The Gravity of Us by Philip Stamper. I gave this 3 stars. There are several reasons for this. Now, this cover is absolutely gorgeous. This cover gets, you know, like 10 out of 5 stars every single time. It's beautiful, and it's what attracted me to the book more than anything, but also the story. This is like Kayla's idea of a perfect story from Books on Lala. She loves books about space that are set on this planet, essentially, you know, not set at space. So this is her, what would be her perfect story. I don't know if she enjoyed this one though, I'm not sure. So this is a YA sci-fi, and basically we're following Cal Lewis, who is like a social media sensation, if you like. He does vlogs and things like that, but it's a bit like YouTube, but it's a different app. And he goes live more than he does, you know, do a YouTube recording, edit it and then set it up. He just basically goes live. He lives in New York City with his parents, but his dad has become an astronaut for NASA. He's just a pilot essentially, but he becomes an astronaut for NASA, and they end up moving to Texas against Cal's will, essentially, because it means that they go on this reality TV series, like reality TV show, and it means that Cal in theory is not allowed to continue doing what he does with his internet sensation thing. It also means he has to leave his best friend, which he's devastated about. Cal is actually gay as well, so this is a queer romance, essentially, queer sci-fi romance. And when he gets to Texas, beforehand he does a bit of research and realizes there are a couple other families. There are basically 10 people that have been employed by NASA to go and live in Texas, but only 6 of them will go up to Mars, essentially. That's where the story's going. And his dad is one of the people that's been picked out of the 10 to go, well, of the 10 to go and live in Texas until they decide who the 6 will be. One of the other families that are already there, that catches Cal's eye, is Leon's family and his sister. I think she's called Kat. That family catches his eye because of Leon, so Cal thinks Leon's hot, and when they get there, a romance ensues. Now, the issues that I had with this were that I felt the romance was, I don't mind an insta-lovey romance, I don't mind it at all, but I felt this romance was really, really rushed. Literally from the get-go, it was basically set up, and they got on like a house on fire. It was great, and there was barely any issues with them, which isn't usually typical romance. There's usually like an issue and all this lot, but I just found that very, very rushed. I didn't care for the most part, which was a shame. But Cal was quite self-centered and selfish. He was great with his mum, who has anxiety. He knows when to back off and give her a bit of space and things like that. And he seemed to be great with Leon, with his depression as well. He seemed to be great with those things, but he was very me. Like, he would phone his best friend up and they'd have a conversation literally about something that Cal is struggling with, and then he'd go, all right, I've got to go now, bye. And he wouldn't ask her about herself or what's been going on and things like that. He was just really self-centered. Eventually she pulled him up on it, but the argument lasted, like, the fallout lasted a couple of days, and that was it. And I just found him really frustrating. He was so unlikable. It was really, really annoying. So I just struggled on that basis, but the cover's gorgeous. If you've got any queer sci-fi recommendations, please leave them in the comments down below, because I'd love to read some more. But unfortunately for me, this was a bust. I gave it 3 stars, which is a shame. And then finally, I read Sleepyhead by Mark Billingham. This was part of a book kind of swap thing that was set up on Instagram, and I swapped with my friend Esther. So she read Blood Orange by Harriet Tice and I read Sleepyhead by Mark Billingham. We bought our own books. This was £2 at the time on Amazon, which was great. She would like really help me out there by picking a really cheap book. So this is a detective thriller, basically following Detective Tom Thorne, and he is on the case of essentially what becomes a serial killer. The guy that is doing the killing doesn't want to be a serial killer. His intention, basically, he manages it with 1 victim. The rest of his victims all die, but his intention is to kind of sever one of, I think it's a carotid artery or something, one of the arteries in your neck, I think it is, to a certain point, twist it to a certain point that you end up becoming completely paralysed. It causes a stroke, and you become completely paralysed. You're still in there, you're still alive, but you can't do anything. You even struggle to move your eyes, you cannot move. And he manages it with one of his victims, who ends up in hospital, and they are trying to figure out who is doing this, because it's got to be a doctor, someone who has got, you know, that level and skill to know exactly the right point to do it. But obviously this guy is struggling because he has killed several women now. They're all women as well. And basically this is the story of Tom trying to figure out who it is, but also struggling with his own demons, which I always love these types of stories. I love it when the cop isn't perfect and they've got their own demons to struggle with and things like that. There were parts in this where I felt like it was a little bit slow, but I really enjoyed it. It was a great time. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is a series. There are about, I think there's about 17 books in the series. I don't know if I'm going to continue. We will see. I might read the next one, but the ratings get better on Goodreads as the series goes on, which I always like to see. There's nothing worse than seeing the ratings get worse as the series goes on. So yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a great choice from Esther, so thank you to her for picking this one for me. And those are the 16 books that I read in, when did I read them? The beginning of May. Honestly, time means nothing at the moment with this lockdown. It means absolutely diddly squat. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in the beginning of May, which is awesome. Hope you have enjoyed this video. Please give it a like down below if you have. I would really appreciate it. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Again, I would really appreciate it. And I shall see you in the next one. Bye for now.